Waterloo opened for business in July 1848, replacing the original terminus of the London and Southampton Railway at 9 Elms. What was to become London's largest terminus was expanded over the years until in the end it had 21 platforms. The Waterloo of the 1960s, which we see in our film, is the result of the rebuilding which the London and South Western Railway undertook in the years just before and after the Great War. With the station's 1936 signal box as a backdrop, Merchant Navy Pacific 35030 Elder Dempster Lines makes a less than sure-footed start, which was a characteristic of these magnificent machines. A boat train for Southampton docks gets underway, headed by West Country Pacific 34021 Dartmoor. Specials connecting with the ocean liners at Southampton were a regular sight at Waterloo over many decades. The southern region green livery of the steam stock contrasts with the drab 1960s BR blue on the electrics it passes. Merchant Navy 35021 New Zealand Line leaves Waterloo on a Bournemouth train in July 1964. The following busy sequence was filmed by John Laird at the end of the rush hour on the morning of July 21st, 1964. BR Standard Class 5 73082 Camelot, now preserved on the Bluebell Railway in Sussex, leaves on the 9:54 to Southampton. 35005 Canadian Pacific, also to be saved from the Cutter's Torch, arrives with a Bournemouth train. She can be seen at the Great Central Railway in Leicestershire. West Country 34098 Templecoombe leaves Waterloo light engine for 9 Elms Locomotive Depot, having brought in an earlier service. 35029 Ellerman Lines arrives to take the 10:30 to Bournemouth. Though still in existence, this locomotive will never steam again, for she has been sectioned and is on display at the National Railway Museum in York to show what lies under the boiler of a steam locomotive. BR Standard Class 5460 73119 Elaine arrives from Basingstoke. Some of the Standard 5s, based on the southern region, were given names previously carried by the much-loved Southern Railway King Arthur 460s upon their withdrawal. With a characteristic bullied slip, 35029 Ellerman Lines eases a heavy Bournemouth train out of the station. Another day, another departure. Jeff Todd filmed the first of the West Country Pacifics, 34001 Exeter, preparing to leave Waterloo in the summer of 1965. As with so many locomotives, as the steam era on British Railways drew to a close, her nameplates have been removed. The many tracks leading up to the terminus were carried on viaduct, and had to curve to the right to reach the platform. West Country 34093, Taunton, heads the Bournemouth service out of the station and onto the viaduct. Sister Loco 34047, Callington, threads her way over the network of tracks and crossings outside the station. Many of the arches which carried the lines into Waterloo were closed in and rented as lock-ups, providing additional revenue for the railway. We begin our journey south with some views from the train. Big Ben is glimpsed from the window, and an Ivet 262 tank brings empty coaching stock from the sidings at Clapham Junction up to Waterloo. The first station was Vauxhall, always a good place to record mainline trains and engines going to and from Nine Elms Shed. John Laird was there on July the 25th, 1964, to film BR Standard 260 76007 on a train of empty coaching stock. Merchant Navy 35009, Shaw Saville, heads back to Nine Elms. Perhaps the most famous of all the Southern Pacifics, 34051, Winston Churchill, now part of the National Collection, passes through on an up train. By contrast, rebuilt Battle of Britain class 34059, Sir Archibald Sinclair, now preserved on the Bluebell Railway, heads towards Waterloo, followed by Merchant Navy 35021, New Zealand Line. Nine Elms Shed supplied the locomotives for Waterloo. The first engine we see is Battle of Britain 34064 Fighter Command. The West Country and Battle of Britain Pacifics were in fact identical, distinguished only by the subjects chosen for their names. Many of these light Pacifics and all of the larger merchant navies were rebuilt by BR to remove some of the innovative but temperamental features incorporated in the design by Oliver Bulleid, the Southern's chief mechanical engineer. The now preserved West Country 34092 City of Wells is on shed, as is a London and South Western M7044 tank 30053. Bulleid's unconventional Q1 060 of 1942 contrasts with an earlier Maunsell Q-class engine dating from 1938, of which 30530 was the first to enter service. Nine Elms closed at the end of Southern Steam in 1967, to the sadness of railway enthusiasts, but no doubt to the relief of many who lived nearby. We resume our journey south. To Clapham Junction, and on to Wimbledon, passing the flyover at Wimbledon Park Depot. The distinctive Southern Railway glasshouse signal box dates from the late 1930s. Merchant Navy 35003, Royal Mail, makes a spirited departure. Quadruple track extends to beyond Basingstoke. Up and down fast and slow lines are adjacent to each other. This is Surbiton. Merchant Navy 35028 Clan Line, another loco which is still very much with us, blasts through the station. Another up train powers towards the capital. A grimy Battle of Britain Pacific passes on a Bournemouth train. A down Bournemouth train comes through the cutting just north of Surbiton Station. Jeff Todd recorded these line-side shots near Berrylands Station. If any of the batsmen were railway enthusiasts, then surely the bowler had a distinct advantage. A Bournemouth Express overtakes a stopping electric at Berrylands Station. On this section of line, we get our first glimpse of one of the most celebrated expresses of all time, the all-Pullman Bournemouth Bell. Ominously for steam enthusiasts, the first diesel locomotive we have seen so far passes the steam-hauled bell. On this occasion, a Brush Type 4 diesel was in charge of the bell, though as it flashes by, steam enthusiasts will have their equilibrium restored by the sight of West Country 34021 Dartmoor on a service in the other direction. A Standard Class 5 heads a long train near Woking, which is our next port of call. Among the passengers alighting from the 350 Weymouth to Waterloo service on July 21st, 1964, was John Laird, who recorded unrebuilt West Country 34038 Linton as she left for Waterloo and the other trains in this sequence. A Maunsell S15 460 30823 arrived with a long down goods. She was the first of the 1927 batch, though the class was a development of an earlier London and South Western design by Urey dating back to 1920. .30823 backs onto a southbound pigeon special, a type of traffic once common on Britain's railways, but which is now, alas, like so much else, on the roads. Merchant Navy 35008, Orient Line, heads an express through the station at speed. The express is shortly followed by a stopping train hauled by Standard Class 5 73081 Excalibur. West Country Pacific 34046 Braunton, another to escape from the Scrapman, heads for Waterloo on a stopping service from Basingstoke. By way of a contrast between the rebuilt Pacifics and those in their original condition, the next train is powered by an unrebuilt Battle of Britain 34079 141 Squadron. A down West of England train stopping at Woking sees the arrival of another merchant navy, which was later to be preserved, 35006 Peninsular and Oriental Steam Navigation Co., which has found sanctuary on the Gloucestershire and Warwickshire Railway. West Country 34002 Sailsbury slips before getting on her way towards Waterloo. (73082) Camelot, which we saw earlier at Waterloo, makes another appearance. The Southern Region Standard Class 5 had high-capacity tenders to cope with the lack of water troughs on the Southern Region. 615 Squadron 34082 roars through on the down fast line with a train for Weymouth. We moved down the line to Basingstoke, where another named standard, 73118, King Leodegrance, arrives with a freight. West Country 34003, Plymouth, complete with crest, makes a surprisingly sure-footed start from the station. John Laird filmed these scenes in just over an hour on July the 25th, 1964. This sequence illustrates the variety and the frequency of steam workings on the Southwestern Main Line at this period. Unrebuilt West Country 34102 Lapsford arrives with an up train. Merchant Navy 35027 Port Line, now preserved on the Bluebell Railway, steams through with a train from Bournemouth. Closely followed by 35001 Channel Packet on a non-stop down express. Unrebuilt Battle of Britain Pacific 34057 Biggin Hill has a stopping service for Sailsbury. (35008) Orient Line heads the next London-bound service. Meanwhile, its station duties completed, Biggin Hill, after the usual bout of slipping, gets her train underway. West Country 34101 Heartland, now preserved on the Great Central Railway, and like so many of her sisters, rescued from Woodham's scrapyard at Barry in South Wales, flashes through on an up service. The next arrival is a Great Western interloper in this feast of southern steam, as 6851 Hurst Grange, with a train from Reading, comes to a halt in Basingstoke Station. The western loco will come off and be replaced by a Southern Region Type 3 diesel electric. The final locomotive we see at Basingstoke is rebuilt West Country 34046, Braunton, shunting the stock which will later form an up-stopping service. Just south of Basingstoke is Worthing Junction, where the Bournemouth and West of England main lines diverge. We encounter our third filmmaker, Brian Robbins, for the first time. West Country 34023, Blackmore Vale, one of the first bullied Pacifics to be preserved, and now on the Bluebell Railway, heads a train from Weymouth near Worthing Junction. Merchant Navy 35014, Nederland Line, steams up the embankment to the flyover. An unidentified light Pacific with a stopping train crosses the flyover. Battle of Britain 34060, 25 Squadron, heads west at Worthing Junction. We will follow in her wake as far as Sailsbury. These scenes at Sailsbury were filmed by John Laird. 35025 Brocklebank Line is serviced at the west end of the station. The train is the 11 a.m. Waterloo to Padstow. This loco is preserved on the Great Central Railway also. An Ivet 262 tank 41300 is on station pilot duty. Unrebuilt Battle of Britain 34054, Lord Beaverbrook, arrives from the west. And heads for Waterloo around the sharp curve at the east end of the station, which caused the derailment of an ocean liner special from Plymouth in 1906. Three 34061, 73 Squadron, is on the 105 departure for Waterloo. John Laird paid a quick visit to Salisbury Shed, code number 72B, where we see West Country 34015, Exmouth. A Maunsell class U-Mogul 31802, in filthy condition, arrives with a stopping train from the west. The absence of any modern tank engines on the Southern led BR to allocate some of these LMS-designed 262 tanks to Southern Sheds for station pilot and empty coaching stock duties. A BR Standard Mogul arrives with a stopping train. Rebuilt Battle of Britain 34109 Sir Trafford Lee Mallory, the penultimate light Pacific to be built, heads off to Sailsbury Shed for servicing, while 34004 Yeovil comes off Shed to take on a train at the station. "35006 Peninsula and Orient Steam Navigation Co. takes water whilst the coal is pushed forward by the staff allocated to these duties, who are to be found at the west end of Sailsbury Station. This gave the crew a breather and cut down on the length of the station stop. The lack of water troughs on the Southern meant that locomotives needed a full tank of water before embarking on the long haul to the west. 73083 Pendragon backs onto its train. As 34106 Lidford enters the station from the west. "34080 74 Squadron gets some attention before heading west on the 3 p.m. Waterloo to Padstow service. The loco displays the badge of the squadron after which she is named, as well as her nameplates. Many southern stations had name boards on the ends of the platform canopies as well as on the platforms themselves. 34033 Chard brings the 6 p.m. departure from Waterloo into Sailsbury, and with steam blasting from her safety valves, she slips as her driver struggles to get her long train underway. "35019 French Line CGT brings an early version of the motor rail concept, the Surbiton to Oakhampton car carrier train, into Sailsbury. "34108 Wincanton has an up train which we board to head back east, passing Mogul 31802 simmering in the yard. We pause at Andover Junction to watch 34108 depart and linger whilst a merchant navy arrives on a down West of England service, before heading back to Worthing Junction to continue our journey to Bournemouth and Weymouth. A down Bournemouth train passes Worthing Junction. An unidentified light Pacific hurries a Weymouth train along south of the junction. Our next stop is Eastleigh. 34077, 603 Squadron, speeds a London-bound train through the station. One of Bulleid's singular-looking Q1 060s, 33009, trundles the goods bound for Southampton along the down-through line. An S15 is glimpsed in the yard. And near the east signal box, 34018 Axminster awaits its next call of duty. One of the Southern's USA shunting tanks waits outside the station. Heading towards Southampton, the line passes Eastleigh Works and Shed. At Southampton, an unrebuilt West Country 34038 Linton arrives with a train from Weymouth. Sister Loco 34041 Wilton heads west. 34098 Templecombe slithers into action with the 432 Basingstoke to Bournemouth train. Three 5008 Orient Line is on an up service. While 35027 Port Line brings a Weymouth train into Southampton Central. The cranes of Southampton's extensive docks form a backdrop to 34013 Oakhampton as it arrives with the Sundays only 225 Bournemouth to Waterloo. These scenes were filmed by Brian Robbins in March 1967, a few months before the end of steam on the southern region. We head west with Brian Robbins to see locomotives in action on the next stage of our journey, in the heart of the beautiful New Forest. BR Standard Mogul 76008 leaves Bewley Road Station with the 838 Eastleigh to Bournemouth stopping service. Standard Class 5, 73092, heads the 846 Bournemouth to Waterloo near Bewley Road. (34087) 145 Squadron powers the next up train, the 921 Bournemouth to Waterloo. 35028 Clan Line is glimpsed through the trees with the 940 Poole to York. 34108 Wincanton follows shortly after Clan Line with the 921 Weymouth to Waterloo. Unrebuilt West Country 34015 Exmouth works a relief to the 921 following behind the main train. Engineering works near Lyndhurst Road Station have led to 34090 Sir Eustace Missenden Southern Railway working wrong road with the 930 Waterloo to Bournemouth. (35013) Blue Funnel slows for more permanent way work near Brockenhurst on the 130 Waterloo to Weymouth. Work to electrify the line to Bournemouth caused a great deal of disruption in the last months of steam working on the line. "34056 Croydon is unchecked as it hauls the 11:30 Waterloo to Bournemouth near Bewley Road. Standard Mogul 76026 on a Bournemouth to Southampton stopping service passes 35028 Clan Line running light engine towards Bournemouth. Brockenhurst is the capital of the New Forest. BR Mogul 76061 arrives at the town station. 34091 Weymouth leaves Brockenhurst on an up train. Now for as fine a display of going nowhere as you could wish to see. 35027 Port Line is now on the Bluebell Railway. Let's hope they don't have this sort of problem. The Lymington branch diverged from the main line just west of Brockenhurst. It was the last steamwork branch in Britain. A standard 264 tank hurries the branch set along the main line. A train for Brockenhurst is momentarily halted near the junction. The 264 tank was ample motive power for the two-coach train on the branch. The Lymington branch is still very much in business, but steam traction is now a distant memory. At Lymington Pier, the line provided a connection with the ferries to the Isle of Wight. On July 23, 1964, Standard Class 3 262 tank 82028 was in charge of the branch train at Lymington Pier. After our excursion to Lymington, we head back to the main line to resume our journey towards Bournemouth. We encounter Merchant Navy Pacific 35008 Orient Line in action near Brockenhurst. Battle of Britain Pacific in original condition passes on an express. Soon to be followed by a merchant navy on the Bournemouth Belle. The destination of the Belle is ours too. This is Bournemouth Central, one of the town's 2 stations. The other was Bournemouth West, where some trains from Waterloo terminated. It was also the terminus for trains to and from the famous and much lamented Somerset and Dorset Railway. The 2 stations were linked by Bournemouth's splendid yellow trolleybuses, which outlasted steam services to the town by a few years. These trolleybuses are on the 25 route, one of the busiest on the system, which linked the stations, Bournemouth Square and Boscombe. The green Hanson Dorset buses served the surrounding districts, and many visitors to this popular holiday resort enjoyed trips on Bournemouth's open-top double-deckers during the summer season. Back at Bournemouth Central, the long down platform was ideal for railway enthusiasts, as it provided splendid opportunities to view activities at the shed, which was adjacent to the station. John Laird used it to good effect to record these scenes. A standard tank moves off shed. A Bullied Pacific, an Ivert 262 tank, and a BR Standard 460 are also on view. On July 20th, 1964, the 12:30 Waterloo to Bournemouth West embarks on the final leg of its journey, hauled by rebuilt West Country Pacific 34018 Axminster. .262 tank 41260 deals with empty coaching stock. Merchant Navy 35021, New Zealand line, arrives with a train for Waterloo. The next departure is 35008 Orient line on the Bournemouth Belle. This superb train was one of the casualties of electrification. We head off from Bournemouth on the final leg of the journey to Weymouth, behind Standard Class 5 460 73017, one of the first of the class, introduced in 1951. At Wareham, the Swanage branch train waits in the bay with a Standard 264 tank in charge. At Radipole Halt, we move forward in time to March 1967, when Brian Robbins recorded trains labouring up the stiff climb out of Weymouth. Near Upwey Halt, a Standard 460 pilots a Bullied Pacific on the steep grade. Unrebuilt West Country 34002 Sailsbury struggles up the bank unassisted with a long empty stock train. Pacifics are lit by the low winter sun, hard at work near Dorchester. We arrived at Weymouth. Jeff Todd visited Weymouth in 1958, and he provides us with our first view of a Merchant Navy Pacific in original condition as 35029 Ellerman Lines heads a train for Waterloo. H-15 Class 460, 30474, was built in 1924 for the Southern Railway as a development of Urey's design for the London and South Western, which dated back to 1914. 34057 Biggin Hill makes the usual tentative start. Jeff Todd also recorded a Channel Owls boat train on the Weymouth Quay tramway, edging its way through the traffic. The train is hauled by one of the small number of outside-cylindered 060 pannier tanks introduced on the GWR by Collett in 1934. These were, in essence, a pannier tank version of Churchwood's 1361 class saddle tanks of 1910. Back to the 1960s, Merchant Navy 35026 Lamport and Holt Line waits the right-of-way with a train for Waterloo. A reminder of the line's Great Western origins comes with a former Great Western Hall Class 460 4978 Westwood Hall, which we see leaving with the 520 to Bristol. And so we near the end of our southern steam odyssey. Steam traction was dispensed with in July 1967 by the southern region, when the electrification of the line to Bournemouth was completed. The third rail was subsequently extended to Weymouth in the 1980s. A surprising number of the locomotives seen in this film are still with us, having been rescued in the main from the scrapyard at Barry Island in South Wales, where over 200 British Railway steam locomotives survived, many for over 20 years, whilst the scrapman concentrated on cutting up wagons. A total of 20 light Pacifics of the West Country and Battle of Britain classes have survived, and 11 of the larger Merchant Navy Pacifics have found their way into preservation. Our thanks are due to John Laird, Brian Robbins and Jeff Todd, who made the films shown in this program and which have enabled us to relive some of the magic of steam in action on the former main lines of the London and South Western Railway, which saw the sunset of steam on the Southern.